Okay, my name is Kelly Hutchins, and I'm here with my colleague Heather Gonzago. We're going to present on better UX with the ArcGIS JavaScript Popup. I feel like there was a little mix-up with the descriptions, so hopefully everybody in here is here to learn about JavaScript, working with the Popup from the JavaScript API. Yeah? Okay, because we're going to talk about JavaScript. So here's a quick agenda. We're going to just go over an overview of what the Popup is. We're going to talk about breakpoints and docking and some of the responsive behavior in the 4x Popup. We'll talk about custom actions. We'll show you a few different Popup examples that aren't, some that are in the help and some that are not, but we'll provide you the code for all of them. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about styling your Popup. So in general, I'm assuming that all of you know this. We just want to be on the same page. This is an example of what a Popup looks like. The 4x Popup in the JavaScript out of the box is responsive. So as you're looking at it on mobile devices, it'll dock down at the bottom of the screen. It changes its behavior depending on the screen size. So that's all built in. You get that for free with the Popup. You can also turn it off, and we'll talk about breakpoints a little bit later. If you want to modify its default behavior, you can. In general, a Popup is a way that you make your app interactive, and you can get details about a current location on the map. So you can have somebody just click on a map. Maybe you do a reverse geocode and throw an address into the Popup along with some other information. Or it can be the results of a search. So when you search using the search widget, the results are displayed in the Popup window. And the most common use probably for it is tied to features in a feature layer. So you have information about each feature, so when they click on the feature, it shows up in the Popup. It's highly customizable, and we'll go over some of the ways you can customize it in this session. This is sort of the architecture of the Popup, again, so we're all on the same page. It's got a couple of different parts. The part up there that says Sudan in bold, that's the Popup title. You can define that through the title. The content, so the description and the chart, that's the content section of the Popup, and the media section where you can have charts and images. Where the focus arena is around the two squares up next to the close button, that's the dock button. It can be enabled or disabled, but that's what allows people to dock the Popup in one of the corners of the app or along the bottom in the mobile experience. And finally, where it says zoom to, sometimes it's at the top, sometimes it's at the bottom, depending on where your Popup is situated. That's called the action bar. You get the default zoom to action if you're associating that Popup with features in a feature layer. You can also add custom actions to that action bar, and we'll show you how to do that later on. Were you going to do Popup Template? Or?
I don't have
the slides?
I just don't have the slides.
Sorry, it's always awkward in this room because you're trying to like see what you guys are seeing and hovering in the back.
So if any of you guys came to my intro session yesterday, we talked a little bit about the Popup template. Basically, the Popup template is what you're going to use to configure how your Popup is going to be displayed within your map. You set the Popup template directly on your feature layer itself, so that there is a Popup template on the feature layer, passing the properties that you want to have specified within this Popup template directly to that feature layer. Okay, yeah, I want to make sure I'm not missing anything else here. So I'm just going to go ahead. I think it's easier if I just show you some of this stuff.
What are you, number 4?
4.
And let us know if we're ever talking about something that doesn't seem to match what's up here. Like we might not be projecting the right screen.
Yeah. So what I have right now is just a basic map showing just with one feature layer on, actually a couple feature layers, polygon and points. I have a Popup template set directly on the polygon feature layer. So if I click on this, what you should see here is it's giving me my private school enrollment. And I have it, the way that I have this Popup template set is based upon some field information. So I'm passing in, within this content, I'm giving it this field information for the state names and a bunch of other just statistical stuff that I have within that, within the feature layer itself. So in addition to the field information, I also have specified some media information. So there's 2 types of media that you can use excuse me, when working with pop-ups. That is charts and images. And in this particular case, I'm working with two separate charts. So I have a pie chart and a bar chart. Okay. In addition to that, you can also set attachments. You can work with that. Or if you just wanted to configure your own customized content using whatever syntax, you can pass in functions. You can use whatever your return that you get on a function call. You can pass that into your content template as well. There is a lot of information here. If you go to, sorry, there's a bit. If you go to the developer's help, so if you guys are not familiar with this, you might just want to go ahead and just bookmark it, take notes, just js.arcgis.com. That will take you to the developer help that we have for JavaScript, the SDK. There's a Popup Template class. This Popup Template is going to basically give you all the information that you need when you need the syntax and so forth when setting that Popup up. So if we go into the properties and we take a look at the content, you can see here there's quite a few different types that we can pass in. What I just showed you in that example was we worked with various pop-up element, different objects. So I used a media type and I used a fields type. Okay, and I'll show you in a little bit later as well how you can actually pass in a DOM node too as well. So if we go ahead and actually take a look at the code behind this, okay. You'll see here I am, this is something that I specified the Esri Popup Template module. Technically, you don't really need to do that. I'm doing it just so that I can actually see what I'm working with within my code. It's completely up to you. The reason why you don't have to do this in this particular case is because the feature layer that I'm working with, the feature layer that I'm actually working with, off the feature layer is a Popup Template property. That Popup Template property is what we call auto-castable, which basically means you do not have to require that when you're writing up your code. If you're not sure if something is auto-castable or not, the best way to check is to go in. Did I find that? Yep. Popup Template, if I could spell. Is if we go and you take a look at the Popup Template property off the feature layer, you can see here that I have an AutoCast tag, and that will tell you. Okay. More information on that, just go ahead, click on that, and it'll take you to our concepts guide, and it'll give you information. Guys, sorry, a little distracting. So, sorry, it's really loud. Okay, sorry. So let me go ahead and show you the code. Jeez.
I love how the mom just reaches her hand out there.
I did. I pulled a mom move. I'm sorry. It was like I'm away from my kids for a couple days, and look what happens. Oh, yeah, I apologize. Okay, so if we go into the Popup template, if you take a look here, you'll see I'm creating a new instance of this. I'm passing in the title information, and this is where the main, the guts of it. So in this content, I'm passing in an array of field information. Okay, so that's where these fields come in. I'm not going to go here and drill down through every single one just for the sake of time, but you can see this is where we're getting, I'm telling it, and it's pulling from the fields within that feature layer. And then secondly, I'm passing in an array of media information. Okay, and again, I'm just telling it what fields it is that I want those these charts to display. Okay, and then after that, I create that feature layer, and then I pass that Popup template that I just created back to that feature layer's Popup template property. All right, so it's a lot of information, I know, in a short amount of time, but we have all of this written up directly within the SDK as well. All right, so I think that's you next, if I'm not mistaken. Got it?
Yeah.
Okay. Nope, it's still 5.
I mentioned earlier that these pop-ups are dockable out of the box. I'll show you what that means in a second. But there are several different dock options that you can specify when you're setting up your view, your map view or scene view. You can say where you want it to dock, or it'll just have this dockable behavior by default. So when you create the pop-up, you set dock enabled true, and then you define some dock options. The first one that says button enabled, remember in that architecture slide I showed you, there was a little button at the top. If you want to dock it somewhere and you don't want people to undock it, you can just disable that dock button, and then that's where it stays, right? And then we specify that we want this pop-up to be in the bottom right corner. There's a sample in the help. Let's see if I can get this to show up. There's a sample in the help called Popup Dock Positions that shows how to do this, so you can just see the auto pop-up. It's probably easier if we view it live. The auto position you can see, and then change it to top right, bottom center. So you can take a look at what the different pop-up locations are. In the interest of time, I'm not going to show you the source code for that because we looked at it on the slide. Yes? They're not movable on their own. No, they just dock to these locations. But that's a good question. So the source code's there in the sample, and I showed it to you on the slide. There are also additional docking properties. This button enabled false disables the docking. And then we have this ability to set a breakpoint where the pop-up docks has its default docking behavior. So by default at width height 580 by 580, I think, it will snap to the bottom of the view. So for mobile phones. But if you want to change that for some reason, you can override that with the breakpoints property. So you have control over that behavior. Custom actions are actually really nice. They make it really easy in the 4x version of the API to do this. If you're working with the 3x version, you can also do custom actions there. It's just a little bit more work. So here we have an example where there's a measure length option that's been added. When somebody clicks on that, you have a function that's going to execute, and that function gets the name of the action that was clicked and the geometry that was clicked. So in this case, the source code would send that geometry to elevation service maybe and generate an elevation profile, or do something with that geometry and add additional information. So let's look at an example of that. So this one's actually kind of cool because it has custom actions per feature, and this wasn't easy to do in 3x, but you can do it in 4x. So in this particular example, I think it's loading pretty slowly, but it's a data set of breweries, I think, in Colorado. Some of them have an attribute with a website that people can go visit. Others do not have a website. So you don't want that link, visit the website, to be there for features that don't have a website, right? So if we click on one, it's not going to work for me. Okay, if you click on one, you can see that this one has the brewery info link that we've added down here. So you can click on that and go to the website. And then if I can find another feature that does not, the link's not there. So that's nice. It's on a per feature basis. And again, all the source code is here. You can take a look at it in the sandbox. And we can see here, we add the custom action. All you have to provide to set it up and have it show up there is a unique ID for it. You can associate an image so that you have some image that displays along with the text, and then you can have some title text that will show up so people know what they're clicking. So that's part one. Once you do that, the action's going to show up in the action bar. Then we have this trigger action that we can listen to on the pop-up. So that happens anytime anybody clicks any of the actions on that action bar. We get passed in an event. The event has this action ID, so we can check to see if it's our Find Brewery action. If it is, we can get the attributes from that particular clicked feature and do something with them. In this case, make a link that people can click to open a website or navigate them to a different website. So I think that's a really nice, nice feature. And again, this sample's in the help. If you just search for pop-up actions, you'll run into this one. I also wanted to show sort of a custom pop-up behavior sample. This one's not in the help. It is in my GitHub repo here. If you just go to Kelly Hutchins, tssamples_JSAPI web map hover. This one is written in TypeScript. TypeScript does compile to JavaScript, but that JavaScript is really hard to read. I think if you're a JavaScript developer, that TypeScript is pretty easy to read. If you are interested in that sample and you go there and you're just completely lost, you can message me on this repo and I'll try and help you out with any parts that are tricky. But let's look at the sample. So here's the sample, and you can see that I'm not clicking. I guess it's hard for you to know, but I'm just hovering over features, and the pop-up is displaying. So this is useful in some cases, maybe where you have a small amount of features and people just want to be able to hover around the map and view the pop-up content. Again, in the interest of time, this is only a demo theater. I'm not going to go too much into the code, but it's all available there in that repo, and you're welcome to take a look at it. I think I'm going to switch back to Heather now, and she's going to talk about the DOM node that she promised she would talk to you about earlier.
So in addition to when you're setting up your pop-up, you can pass in, like I said, in that pop-up template, you can set some field information, media, functions, promises, whatever it may be. You can also pass in a DOM node to your content for your pop-up. This is something that I've seen a few times on our the GeoNet forum. We don't have it. I don't believe we have it docked just yet. If it's not, it's going to be. But it's a request that we've seen come through. So I was playing around with it a few days ago, and I was like, I know we can get this to work. So basically, what I have here is just a little. It's a scene view of Mount Vesuvius. One of my kids has been studying on that now, so we're doing all of that. So we have Mount Vesuvius here, and the way I have it set up is if you click on an area, you should see here, and this is actually, the sizing is a bit off, so I would have to go in here and update this for the screens that we're working with. But as you can see here, what I have is I've created a map view, and I'm putting that as the content, setting that as the content to work within my pop-up content. And it is it's synced between it. So if I go in here and I update this, that map view, the 2D map view, that's topographic base map, will automatically update to what I have within that scene view. So if we took a quick look, what we have, there's a bit of code here. Okay. I want to get to the right code. All right, so on the set content info, it's a function that I call on the scene views pop-up open. You can pass in some information like the title, the location, and then the actual content. On the content, what I'm doing is I'm calling the set content info. What I'm doing here is I'm actually going in and I'm passing in this, because basically I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. But here, let me go back. All right, so we're passing in the point, the center, the scale, and then also the map that I want to show in this case. And it's going to be a little bit different because you said I was looking at the topo map. So in this case, once I get that passed in, setting that content info, and this is where I'm doing that magic where when I adjust the extent within the scene view, it automatically adjusts that itself within the map view. And then I just return that container off of the pop-up view, which is that DOM node. And we know that we can take a DOM node as the content for that pop-up. So you have a pop-up there's the pop-up, you can get the pop-up directly off of the view, which is what we're using in this particular example. All right, and then you have the Popup Template, which is what you get off of the feature layer. Okay, and that's where you're going to be able to get access to things like all of the feature attributes and the field information, or like your fields and so forth. All right, so I probably should have clarified that beforehand. All right. So just kind of a little quick proof of sample or a proof of concept sample just to show you that it can be done. And again, I know it's just, I showed a bunch of stuff here, but I think Kelly, we can put some of this stuff up here on her repo. And if anybody's interested, you can go ahead and download it and take a look. And this should hopefully be put in as a sample within our next release, 4.7 release, which should be coming out mid-April.
Styling.
Styling? Okay, yeah. Cool. All right, so last but not least, a lot of you guys probably may not like the default look, may or may not like the default look of how your pop-ups show up. So this is where you might want to go in and do some customized styling. Very first thing that you're probably going to want to take note of, usually what I do, is if you go in, let's say for example I wanted to change the color of the map view coordinates, this title that I have for this pop-up. What you could do is you can actually just, if you right click and you go to inspect, what that does is it's going to go in, I have it open up, can you guys see that? A little bit better? Okay.
Yep.
I have it open up Chrome DevTools, and it'll tell you it's going to hover over the element that I currently I was inspecting, all right? So I can see here that I'm in this header or Esri-popup_header class. If I go in here, I can play around with these properties to my heart's content. Say I want to make it, I don't know, something really bright. Try aqua so we can actually see it. Okay. All right. So you can see here that this, now this is only going to stay, this doesn't persist. If I refresh this application, that's going to go away. All right. But at least it'll allow you that opportunity to go in there and start playing around with some of the styles, see how you might want to go ahead and update how this pop-up looks, the look and feel of the pop-up. If you are interested in persisting this, one option is to, if you're familiar with Chrome DevTools, you can set up local overrides and you can play around with all of this stuff to your heart's content. It saves all of those changes out directly to a folder that you've got persisted on your local machine. And if you go in here and refresh, you can close out of your application, reopen it. As long as that folder still stays there, you'll be able to go in and access those changes as well. But yeah, this is a really, really useful resource, especially when you get into some of these widgets that there's a lot of classes and styling associated with it. Just going in and inspecting it, just traversing through all of it, all the elements, you'll actually get a better idea of how it's all laid out. Okay? All right, I think that's it for me.
Yep, I think we have maybe like 2 or 3 minutes for questions, if anybody has any. If not, thank you for coming.